You've probably already seen the video with the 6 types of guitarists, right? Today we're going a little deeper and identify the 5 most important types of bass players. The punk. And the first rule here is no fingering. It has to be a pick that you play with. It is also extremely important that the bass fulfills a dual role as an instrument as well as a jockstrap. The bass has to hang so low that it practically drags on the floor. As a result, the instruments are rocked down, or as they say in professional circles, naturally aged. This bassist is also noticeable about his clothing. Torn pants, a ripped shirt so that the low-sounding artist can show off his starving belly below. Perfect. And I'd like to be Sid Vicious. Attitude is helpful but not decisive for this kind of bassist. Choice of instruments are an almost broken P bass or a Thunderbird plus the sickest amp that you can get your hands on. Second, the jazzer. Quite a tough break, I gotta admit, but worth looking at. Basically, you have to differentiate between old school jazzes and new school jazzes. The former, tuxedo, lacquer shoes, and an upright bass are part of the usual aesthetic image of this type of bassist. The modern jazzer tends to have a stronger, let's say, hipster vibe. The natural enemy of the modern jazz bassist is root notes and straight rhythms. In the wild, these species you usually avoid being seen together. However, there are rumors of a dropout program for ex-jazz bassists in which attempts are made to mediate between the individual ethnic groups.
That was his idea.
And now I'm bankrupt. I'm divorced.
In terms of weaponry, these bassists are usually equipped with fretless, headless, or just something else with less basses. The Prog Rocker. This type of bassist is a mixture of the previous category as well as the following. It is not particularly easy to recognize this type of bassist by his clothing or her clothing, but his overall look is impressive due to the clearly visible live and rock experience. A long beard and an aura of a mentally manifested lonesome rider in the here and now are definitely attributes that characterize this kind of bassist. The prog rock bassist has the peace in mind. 7/8, 6/4, 7/4, 19/18 in fast and slow, that can stress him out, and so he plays everything with a serene calm that resembles the meditative cycle of a Nepalese monk. What? In contrast to many other bassists, this one doesn't engage in a religious war over to pick or not to pick in this, therefore just as flexible as he is with the instruments he uses. This bassist is a real asset to any band, as he not only supports songs with basic notes but also with melody and with variation. Unless, of course, you also want other instruments to find their place in the band, in which this case, this type of bassist is not really recommended. Also interesting are the shapes of the basses and types of amplifiers that this bassist uses. Take a look. This type simply cannot be defined in one form. And now, the modern fusion bassist. This type of bassist is completely crazy and can be found more and more on YouTube these days. Not only do these low-frequency rascals use their instrument like a melody instrument, no, some examples of this breed also see it as necessary to deal with songwriting, to be a frontman, to lead a band, to play solos, and crazily enough to sing along to melodies and solo lines. And sometimes even as a third, as a fifth, a seventh, or even crazier as a tritone. What's wrong with them? There are even supposed to be forms within this species that actually engage in sophisticated jazz reading and know their way around music theory. Crazy, isn't it? Basically, you see this form of bass player with more than 4-string basses. So 5 or sometimes even 6-string basses. I don't understand that. If this type of bass player needs so many strings, why doesn't he at least become something reasonable like a guitarist? Duh. Early examples of this genre are probably Jacob Pastorius or Tony Levin. The modern fusion bassists are more oriented towards Seo Dofi, Myung or Ben Yude and others. Did I say that right? One thing to bear in mind with this type of bassists are they are completely useless in the band context, at least in rock and metal. No. Tool is not metal, because by deciding to join this type of bassist in a band context, you commit yourself to a lifelong celibacy of root notes. And last but not least, the cover bassist. This type of bass is not easy to identify visually. From rocker to jazz player in a tuxedo, indie style or Mexican voodoo monk, this bassist has many faces and appears in every form. Probably the easiest way to unmask him is through conversation. Ask about the song repertoire of the bass player. If the answer is what? You've fallen for an NPC. If the answer comes straight from the gun like 396 plus 500 miles, you've stumbled across a bassist of this type. Cover bassists don't prefer big 8x12 bass stacks with 1,000-watt darkless systems. No, they love to play directly into the PA. According to this type of bass player, you can't hear the difference anyway, so their favorite choice of weapon is an Ibanez or a Fender Prezi, and if it has to be an amp, then the little Hardkey or Warwick Cube. So these were my 5 types of basses. Do you agree with me, or can you think of any other categories? Let me know in the comments and I'll catch you in the next hangout.